Welcome everyone who's joining. It's so nice to see lots of smiling faces on Zoom. Really lovely to be here with you all for our first workshop of the day. Really exciting. These are a bit more interactive. There's a bit more time in breakout rooms than in the other track, the kind of round tables and keynotes. And this workshop is on how to grab attention and media. And I think we know in this world where we're drowning in noise, there's a huge amount going on in the media. One of the key questions for social movements at the moment is how do we break through all of this noise? We're going to be exploring the art of disruption, message discipline, and storytelling in actions. And we're really lucky to be joined by two brilliant speakers. We've got James Skeet, who has been involved in animal rights and activism since around 2016, and then became heavily involved with Animal Rebellion and Extinction Rebellion in 2019, working in the planning and execution of those large-scale disruptions that we all saw break through in the media. And James has been involved with Just Stop Oil since the inception of the campaign at the end of 2021, and is now the media coordinator for Just Stop Oil and part of their strategy team. So I think it's safe to say he's a bit of an expert on viral disruption, press engagement, and message discipline. So it's great to have James with us today. And we've also got Marijn, who joined Extinction Rebellion right from the get-go, just a couple of months after it was founded. There for all of those key events, the Declaration of Rebellion, the Five Bridges, April 2019, and has co-hosted the XR podcast and Rebel Radio, and also worked in the Citizens Assembly Working Group. At the moment, she's part of the press team and the live stream team and one of the coordinators for the media and messaging team, and has been doing this for several years. So another expert in social movement media. I've also been informed that she's currently fostering lots of cats for an animal rescue charity. So we may be able to expect some disruption from kittens during this talk. So I'm going to pass over to James now.
Oh, hiya guys. Good morning. I'll warn you, I'm not very much of a morning person, and it's Saturday, so this is going to be quite groggy. And I am also like fairly unprepared, which is sort of like, start as you intend to continue with Just Up Oil. An awful lot of like what we do is kind of thrown together at last minute, and we hope for the best. So I guess with that, I'll kick off. Yeah, I don't really have a presentation, so I'm probably just gonna just chat through, I suppose, like some of our principles and stuff. I suppose to kind of give a bit of the lay of the land, really. It's kind of worth recognizing that at least in the UK, 80% of UK media is owned by 5 billionaires, which obviously makes it quite tricky for those of us who might be saying things that billionaires don't particularly like to hear to get our message across. And one thing that we've really found in Just Up Oil quite a lot is that a lot of the time the media will only really cover you if they can vilify you. And so really in order to like maximize kind of the political pressure, really, we believe that you have to be the thing that everyone's talking about, right? If you don't have millions of eyeballs, you're not in the ballpark of achieving significant social change. So I suppose like a little bit about the backstory of Just Up Oil. The initial wave of Just Up Oil was basically based on the fuel protests of 2000. And that involved targeting and shutting down the distribution of oil all across the country, which we were pretty successful at, to be honest. It ended up closing quite a lot of forecourts across the south of England. It took us about 11 days to actually get onto the front page of the Daily Mail. And I mean, we had speculated that there might have been a denotice in the media about keeping it kind of quiet. We don't have any evidence of that, but it took they were very much not wanting to cause panic buying, and you might argue that it was like actually quite a high outlay from us in terms of arrests, in terms of the logistics of pulling something like that off, for what modest media. It wasn't bad by any stretch of the imagination. But throughout 2022, we sort of moved to what we would call a more attrition strategy. And what we mean by that is kind of like repeating the same sorts of actions kind of over and over and over again. And we would pair those with what we call cultural actions, which are basically, probably some of the things you've seen, like the infamous souping that Phoebe can tell you all about, basically sort of disrupting kind of cultural events that have a lot of eyeballs on them. And the idea with that is really to sort of drag kind of what's happening on the streets, and hopefully some of what's happening with the climate onto the front pages basically day after day. And so the rationale for an attrition strategy like that is essentially that, I mean, if you do one roadblock, like no one really gives a fuck. If you do hundreds of roadblocks every day for 3.5 months, all of a sudden it's kind of a national crisis, and you're what everyone's talking about over the breakfast table, basically. I mean, one idea that you often hear a lot in relation to Just Stop Oil, and an awful lot of like what's perpetuated in the media is that the kind of public disruption that groups like Just Stop Oil engage in, although it's certainly not the only one, is that it's counterproductive, and that it kind of pushes people away from a given cause. And really, like, it basically it isn't true. The evidence shows that where you have a topic that has like a broad base of majority support, such as taking action on the climate, that actually, though people might have an initial negative reaction to some certain disruptive actions, they tend to kind of disassociate it from the people who are taking the action themselves, like the activists. And so you kind of generally, I mean, you'll have a range of reaction that fall within a kind of fall within a range. But by and large, your biggest kind of cohort is like, the reaction be like, oh, I hate these Just Stop Oil fuckers, but the climate crisis is important. And so you really do begin to kind of like sort of start agenda seeding in society, so all of a sudden you're a topic on Question Time. The BBC's making a documentary about the oil industry, whatever it is. And generally the sort of evidence shows that as time passes, the anger to the disruption tends to subside, but the awareness of the issue remains. And so really what you're looking to do is kind of shift the Overton window, which is kind of the range of conversations that you're having in society, open up a space in the national discourse, and generally you'll see this space occupied by more moderate factions of any given movement, and oftentimes more moderate politicians will occupy that space. There's like countless examples of this throughout history, and I mean that brings us to 2025, where Just Stop Oil's initial demand of no new oil and gas is now government policy, right? So we're like point for point, that's exactly what we've seen. It's exactly what the books we're reading, sort of the mid 2010s, were saying would happen, and it's happened. And the reason we chose a single winnable demand was really to attempt to demonstrate the efficacy of these sorts of tactics, and hopefully, with any luck, galvanize the wider environmental movement into action. So consider yourself galvanized. Please do consider engaging and doing some. I'm probably preaching to converted here, but yeah, it'd be. Some of us are quite tired, so it'd be good if you could come and take our jobs for us. I suppose a little bit, kind of a bit about like sort of the language that we try to use. We tend to try and focus our messaging around what universal values, essentially, like, and these are sort of ideas that appeal to kind of people both right-wing perspective and left-wing perspective. There's a whole bunch of these, like home, safety, family, service to the community. I can't think of the rest of them off the top of my head, but basically there's a great book called Don't Think of an Elephant by George Lakoff. I highly recommend you add that to your reading list if you're interested in doing any sort of media stuff. It was kind of like written in the early 2000s, like during the first Bush administration, and so it's a bit like, oh, we'll just get the Democrats in and everything will be fine. So from that perspective, it's not really aged very well, but the principles are basically, like kind of universal, and really helps kind of bridge that gap between right wing and left wing thinking. We try to avoid using terms like protesters and activists. And in communication with the public, we really try to sort of minimize the use of stats, or at least kind of place them into evocative mental images that kind of people can kind of understand the scale of. We try to write in a style that's like easily copyable by UK media. I mean, one advantage of the collapse of print media in recent years is that journalists are like strapped for time, and they're hungry for clickbait stories, and are generally quite lazy, which can really play to your advantage. And so ideally, what you want is for them to basically just copy and paste everything you've written, and you get all your messaging in there. And it's honestly, it's a really great day and a really satisfying feeling when the Daily Mail can only be bothered to come up with some like toxic eco zealot based headline, but they otherwise print you like a press release verbatim. It's awesome. Just to boil, I mean, one criticism that gets landed at us quite a lot is that we target things that don't have anything to do with oil. And I mean, firstly, I would argue that there's not a single aspect of our like lives or like our culture that is going to remain untouched by climate breakdown. So I kind of argue everything's fair game. But having said that, actually, what we found is that the more sort of incongruent and like weird the stunt, actually the greater attention. And the famous souping that Phoebe brought Phoebe to everyone's attention here, most likely. That was originally supposed to be Campbell soup on a Andy Warhol painting, which would have probably made more sense. But that didn't transpire for various reasons, and it's kind of ironic that if it had gone to plan like that, it probably wouldn't have wouldn't have hit the same nerve, and it wouldn't have had the same kind of impact. And so this is like one real strange aspect of civil resistance is sort of the unpredictable nature of it, and sometimes like weird things fly out of it that the hope is that you can sort of mobilize around. And actually there's some research from Social Change Lab recently that analyzed these kind of like weird incongruent sort of actions that sort of seem a bit disconnected. And actually the evidence shows that they drive support for the campaign, they drive donations to the campaign. So it's worth being weird, basically. In terms of like process, I mean, we kind of have a sort of almost a production line, I suppose, where we kind of like we might conceive of an action. We decide the messaging for it. We prep action takers on like spokes, get them to record testimonials, like if that fits with what they're doing. We prep photographers, videographers, and we generally have like some that are sort of internal to us, some that are external, like embedded from national media. And then we train a pool of spokespeople. We construct press release, we construct socials, posts, and all the rest of it, and distribute it to media. And we might also pitch stuff, and get in pitching things like op-eds and stuff to get like word, like what prisoners are experiencing, and get that conveyed. Because obviously we want to be foregrounding those stories. And obviously, yeah, we tend to elicit quite a few interviews off the back of that, and we tend to sort of accept all of them. And then it's really just an exercise in sort of reframing whatever the interviewers are saying and trying to get your point across. And I mean, and that's basically it. Sort of like rinse and repeat. And that's pretty much a recipe to be on the front pages of all the papers. It's kind of not really rocket science. It's like find a treasured cultural monument, vigorously apply some food-based substance to it, stream it to 60 million people. Jobs are good, and you're on the front page of the papers.
Great. Thank you so much, Skeet. And I'm going to pass over to Marijn now.
Yay. Yeah, thanks Phoebe and thanks so much Skeet. Yeah, that sounds brilliant. Great advice. Yeah, definitely. Agree with that. So I have prepared a little bit of a presentation for you all with some visual aids. So let me see if I can share that. I don't know. Are you able to see this? Yeah. Okay, it's really annoyed me because the green of the logo doesn't match the green of the background, so that's really upsetting for my little brain. But anyway, ignore that. So yeah, I'll be talking on behalf of the Extinction Rebellion media and messaging team. Um, so I'll just talk you through a little bit of the kind of actions that we've done that have managed to get a lot of attention in the media. So I don't really think I need to say much that the April 2019 rebellion got a lot of attention worldwide in the press. And I think rather than focusing on the actual events, I'm going to talk a little bit about what about it that I think caused that attention to be there at that point in time. Because obviously times have changed a lot since XR started 7 years ago. And yeah, we're not in the same media landscape as we were back then. So in April 2019, we had already done a few things. So we'd done the Declaration of Rebellion in October 2018. We had Greta there. You know, it was a lot bigger at the time when we were organizing. We were like, oh, if we get like 100 people, that would be amazing. It far exceeded our expectations. It was amazing. It was huge, and it was lovely. We did an impromptu roadblock. You know, it was just really good. And then we also took 5 bridges in November 2018 as well, which also got a lot of attention. All of this was at that time new. This was before COVID. This was before Black Lives Matter. This was before Insulate Britain, before Just Stop Oil. So it was relatively new. People hadn't really seen protests like this for a long time. You know, the culture of protests had kind of dwindled a lot. We maybe had a big Iraq march, things like that, but there were some student strikes when the tuition fees went up, but there wasn't that much kind of direct action going on. Greenpeace UK gone a little bit quiet as well. You know, thank God they're back on their game now, doing awesome stuff again. But yeah, so I think everybody was really taken by surprise. The police didn't believe that we were going to have thousands and thousands of people there. They were like, you know, there'll be like a handful of hippies, but whatever. So I think originality, novelty, and surprise are really key for getting your action into the media. Creativity, a pink boat in Oxford Circus, a bridge covered in trees, and a skating ramp, and you know, things like that. I think, you know, these were all elements that were not expected, that had never been seen before, and just really grabbed everybody's attention. And overall, even though people were obviously annoyed with us blocking roads, but at that time we were still quite new. Overall, the media coverage was quite positive. Um, so then move forward to October 2019 when we did another rebellion. Most of the attention went more negative. You could tell that the police on the street were very different from the police we'd seen in April. The whole vibe had changed, which I think is a good sign because that means that they're worried about you, right? So they try to shut you up. So another way of getting into the media is controversy. So this Canning Town action was a few rebels climbing on top of a tube at Canning Town tube station. And the reason why that got so much attention is because it got quite aggressive and quite violent. They'd hoped to target commuters going into Canary Wharf, like, you know, the bankers and those kinds of things. But instead, what we found was it was a lot of people commuting back from cleaning jobs, nighttime shifts, things like that. So there was a lot of, yeah, it just didn't go down the way that we'd hoped. But it got a lot of attention. Now, whether that is negative or good, you know, that's up to you to decide. But what is very clear in this media landscape that we're living in is that people love sensationalism. So this was great for the media. You know, there were scenes of people dragging people off the tube. There was someone kicking. There was a lot of chaos, and this is what the media love, right? Sadly, the story then becomes about the protesters themselves. The story becomes about Extinction Rebellion itself. There's hardly any mention of the actual issue, which is inevitable climate and ecological collapse. But if you want to be in the headlines, controversy is one of the ingredients you can go for. Daring actions. So we had James Brown, Paralympian, climb on top of a British Airways airplane at City Airport. Again, this was very daring. He was obviously a fairly high profile figure anyway. So this is again something that the media lapped up, whether positive or negative. Again, you know, it's just getting it out there. Yeah, so again, daring action, something quite extreme. I mean, this frankly looks terrifying to me, but you know, and it obviously resulted in James going to prison. So these are, if you're planning an action like this, these are obviously things you need to think about. Another one, so it was already mentioned, I think, in the previous session, but we did a big action blockading Rupert Murdoch's print works, so in Broxbourne and in Liverpool. So I suppose the ingredient for this success was, first of all, lots of arrests, which again, you know, the April 2019 rebellion was also lots of arrests, so that also helped at that time get lots of, I don't know if that is relevant anymore today, but at that time that was relevant. People were constantly, journalists were constantly asking, how many arrests now, how many arrests now? Like, they were obsessed with the numbers of arrests at the time. So many arrests, and also picking a big target, a high profile target. You know, this is the Sun, the Daily Mail, the Telegraph. You know, this is people, you know, the amount of people who read these papers is massive. So it's a big, high profile target that got us into the headlines. And of course, as you can see, again, the story is about the amount of arrests. The story becomes about, you know, they try to discredit us. It becomes about the individuals taking the actions. Again, it's not about why this press was targeted, you know, their climate denying activities and articles that they're writing, and the, you know, the fact that this was necessary because of the climate and ecological emergency. But it does get you out there, and people, you know, your name is out there, your action is out there. Yeah, get some famous people to come along. This is always a good ingredient to get some publicity for your action. So we've got lots of examples on this. I just decided to pick this particular one because it was so great. It was the Tufton Street action in September 2020. We had, you know, it was a fairly soft touch action in a way. We had lots of amazing speakers, lots of famous writers, you know, John Monbiot was there, Zadie Smith, Rupert Reed, lots of amazing people were there. And it resulted in numerous arrests. And, you know, having celebrities there, really helped bring that story out into the press and into the media. So that is also a good tip. Get some famous people to join your action and you'll get some publicity off it. And then, yeah, the last one that I wanted to go through, which was a really bizarre one, which we did not expect to get this much media attention, was XR's "We Quit" statement, where we announced that we were going to stop disrupting the general public. So stuff like roadblocks or blocking bridges or climbing on top of tubes. We were going to stop, and we were going to do more targeted direct action. And it just really showed how much the media itself, journalists who are meant to be trained and meant to know how to read the news, really picked up just on that headline of "We Quit." So we got a lot of response saying, "Oh, Extinction Rebellion has been dissolved. Extinction Rebellion are, no longer doing anything." And we got, I got an interview on Good Morning Britain about it, which was bizarre, and ended up talking about Mr. Broccoli, which was Animal Rebellion at the time. So I was a bit like, you should have asked them to come here and talk about Mr. Broccoli. It was weird. But anyway, we got on there. I got to promote one of our events, the big one. So, any publicity type thing. But again, it's just this really weird thing. So keep them guessing, let them think you're saying this, but actually you're not saying that at all. Say something controversial, something they haven't expected. "We quit." So simple. And it didn't mean we quit at all, but it really got us so much attention. So, that sort of creativity with language that you can play with, that is something that you can use to try and get yourself out there in the media and into the headlines. So we've obviously done so much more, and it's impossible to talk about 7 years of actions and 7 years of media moments, but I hope those are some little ingredients that give you some ideas for your own actions and your own things that you're planning to help you try and get some placement in the media. So, just to recap, so originality and novelty, something that hasn't been done before, controversy, like, unfortunately, things like violence, something shocking, sensationalist, this is what the media wants. So that will, whether that was intentional or not, will get you in the media. Something daring, bravery, something really out there that someone does, like James Brown on this airplane. Many arrests, not sure if that is still the case today, especially considering what arrests means nowadays compared to a few years ago. But at the time, the more arrests, the more the press were interested. They were obsessed with the numbers, as I say. A big, high-profile target, print works of the Sun, great. Get some notables and celebrities in and keep them guessing, work with the language, say what you don't mean, but also don't lie, that kind of thing. And yeah, keep that sense of mystery up. But then I think I really want to talk about, getting stuff into the media right now compared to 2018, 2019 is very, very different. It's really hard. If we say we are going to be occupying the lobbies of insurance companies and we're going to be dropping a banner and there's going to be people like, "Oh yeah, but you've done that before," and we're like, "Yeah, but this is really important. Like, this insurance company is potentially responsible for the deaths of rah." And they're like, "Yeah, it's not really a story though, is it?" Like, it is incredible, the apathy that there is now in the journalistic space. And it isn't necessarily the fault of the journalists. They're just doing their jobs, but they are part of a business, and they have editors and they have boards to respond to, and yeah, so it is really tricky. We've literally had a journalist say to us, someone would have to die or get very, very injured in order for me to pick up this story. And it's just shocking. Like, this is what it's come to now. Just plain old boring protest is not newsworthy anymore, even if you're protesting about, you know, the death of millions of people due to climate and ecological breakdown. It doesn't matter. It's not a story. It's not newsworthy. So it's very, very shocking. What we've also noticed ever since the "We Quit" statement is that big actions without any disruption do not make headlines. So 100,000 people in Parliament Square for 4 days, no headlines. Restore nature now, no headlines. Yeah, I'm going to wrap up so we can go into the breakout room. Sorry. Media regulators. This is a huge thing. The media regulators are not independent. The media board members or chairs are on the regulator boards, so it's not independent. This is a really, really important thing to remember. Powerful people pushing bad agendas, the billionaires, Rupert Murdoch, all those people, they are in charge of the media. The mega rich and corporations run the media. Sorry, I know that. So is media attention the ultimate goal? Have a think about, what are you doing this for? Stay true to what you believe in, what you're passionate about. Obviously, getting media attention is important. Otherwise, your message won't go out into the world. But stay true to yourself. Don't just do it to get attention. Also, make sure that your action makes sense to you and your group. Anyway, and the last thing I want to say is be kind to yourself and your team. Being in a media team is super stressful. It is the least regenerative space you can be in. Don't beat yourself up if it doesn't get media attention. Don't succumb to the pressure, and don't follow the toxic system. Stay true to yourself. Be kind to yourselves. Your team is your resource, so look after it, and yeah, be kind to yourselves. And sorry, I always go on too long. I'll pass back to Phoebe.
Thank you. That was brilliant, both of you.